Just recently here at Dragon Towers, we were very kindly given £75 in Amazon gift vouchers. Very nice. And of course, we sat down and we thought, what can we do with this? We should really put it towards something domestic. There's that leaky shower that needs fixing, for example. Could buy that part for that. Could also do with some new saucepans. Or we could split it 50-50 and treat ourselves. What do you think we did? And what do you think I bought? Well, today on Dragon's Teeth, we're going to find out. Hi folks, thanks for joining me today. So yes, an unexpected little windfall led to me purchasing something that, well, it's a very important thing for all gamers. And this is a subject I've touched upon before, because of course when I did my graveyard build, I spoke about getting those what I called pizza boxes. They weren't actually pizza boxes, they're Royal Mail boxes, but pizza boxes would do the same thing if they're the right size. They worked out very well for transporting my terrain. And you may remember, I also developed a system with the plastic trays and the non-slip matting of getting the figures in there as well. So in effect, I managed to get everything for that game, the We Want the Gold skirmish game, pretty much in one trip from the car. Now, having said that, I'm always on the lookout for new things. And often, of course, it's a case of what my eyes want, my wallet can't always afford. But there was something on Amazon that I've had my eye on a little while. It's been sitting in my basket. And I thought, well, I've got this little bit of money coming. Now's the time to get it. I'll show you what that is in a moment. And I particularly want to give a shout out to the Bedroom Battlefields podcast, which has been going for a good few years now, but I've only just recently discovered it. And I'm gradually working my way through all the episodes. Lots of good stuff on there. I'll put the link down in the show notes below, of course. Do go and give it a listen if you haven't already. Alright, so let's take a look at some of the other bits and pieces I've been using for transport, and then we'll get on to that mystery item. First thing then is the good old standard, the plastic crate. These can be quite expensive. I normally get mine from B&M. They've usually got some good prices or deals in there. This one I actually got in Tesco's. This was on offer for £3.25 and I put one in the trolley. I really should have got a few, because the usual thing, right? I went back a few days later and they were they were more than double the price again. So I don't know why they were marked up for that. But anyway, I got one of those. Now the plastic crate, of course, is very versatile. It's good for putting, if you've got terrain mats or any other bits and pieces you can fold up and put in there. But the other thing I use this for is a lot of my terrain in terms of individual houses. Here, for example, is my cabin, my Evil Dead cabin that I did a couple of weeks back. So I could just put that in the box with all the other stuff, but it's all a little bit loose. Instead, I put it in a cardboard box that has got some paper and some foam bits in there as well. So that will go in there, and if I've got other similar things like my Esoteric Order of Dagon building or whatever, I'll normally put those in boxes as well. So boxes within boxes, and I can get a fair amount of stuff in these crates. And the great thing is as well with the crates, of course, they're easy to carry and they're stackable as well. So also very good for storage. From there, we'll go back to the humble cardboard box. So these are like the pizza type boxes that I got for my graveyard build. I've got one or two spare of those. This one has got some CD bases in there. These are terrain pieces for my 10mm fantasy battles. Again, these are okay. They are loose in the box. They're okay if everything is held flat and, you know, it's not moved about too much. What I generally recommend with this then is, as I did with my graveyard build, is finding a case or a box or something else that you can put this in to carry it, to help keep it steady. Because the other issue you might have if you're carrying like a few, you see how that slips there, even just lifting that up, you know, you carry a few of these across the car park, you put your foot in a pothole or something, top one slides off and disaster. So generally speaking, if I just got one or two, it's okay, but if I'm carrying a few of these, I want to put them in another case or box as well. Now the other thing is things like boxes for laptops. So this is one laptop box, or a Chromebook actually, and you can see it says on there, Lara's Chromebook, do not touch, Robert. Shows you how much notice I take, doesn't it? I did have permission to take this. But again, now in this, I've just got a few sort of spare bits of road and other stuff. So this is all quite loose, soft scenery, bases for trees, that kind of thing. Stuff that isn't really going to get damaged. So again, that fits perfectly in that kind of box. Doesn't really matter if that gets shaken about too much. Now, let's get on to figures. First of all then, because I had a huge amount of 25mm figures from my old Middle-earth wargaming days that I wanted to store, not so much transport, but they're not going to get used at the moment. Hopefully they will in the future. I bought some of these Navara boxes, and these are very sturdy. You get the handle there, and I've actually taken one or two of the trays out. You'll see why in a moment. But these come stacked with you're sort of 3 or 4 deep. You can buy them in different sizes, and these are great for your 28mm. I think I don't know how many figures I've got exactly, but I got all of them in 3 of these boxes. Basically that's 18 per section, so that's 36 figures per layer, and I think you're getting 4 layers in these, certainly 3 layers, 3 or 4 layers. So yeah, these are very good. But of course, you know, they do cost a bit, this type of thing. But I think if you've got a lot of figures, especially to transport in one go, then these are great. However, I did find another solution as well. And that solution presented itself in the guise of a new laptop that I bought. This is the box that it came in, a VivoBook. Again, we've got the handle here. Again, it's a nice sturdy box. Of course, there's no foam inlay. So this is what I've did. I've taken some of the foam from that last box, 1 or 2 of the layers. The nice thing with that foam is when you sort of take your little compartments out, you empty those, you get lots of foam blocks, which are very good for packing. And I've got 2 layers in here. That is basically enough to get all my figures in for the skirmish game, both the character figures and the various monsters and creatures as well. Particularly things like my Swamp Witch. I was very pleased with that one. That came out very nice. And as a GM, it's nice because I can put all the character figures in one part. Obviously, the players get those. And then I can have all my monsters and creatures ready in another part here. They're easily to hand, easy to get out and put straight onto the table. So yeah, for skirmish games where I'm taking maybe 40-50 figures or something like that, then this is a great solution. You do have to be careful still. I'll mention this later on about, again, see figures like this where you've got that spear, about how you put those back in. So that's just something to be aware of course, but that's going to happen, you know, whatever sort of system you use. In case I didn't mention it before, I think I probably did, but just in case, where I'm doing my 10mm fantasy battles with our Fantastic Battles rule set. Oh, and by the way, the Bane Wars campaign is starting up again. Part 2 is about to begin. I'll be doing a report on that very soon. This is B&M. I think they're like trays for pieces of jewellery or something like that. But the base size we use for Fantastic Battles just fits perfectly in those. Again, obviously, if you shake these about, you know, it's not so great, but they do stack. So stacking these in a plastic crate works very well. A little bit of packing around the edges if you need it. Then that has been a very effective way to transport the 10mm as well. Of course, all of this costs money. I mean, the B&M stuff is not too expensive, so you can get some good deals in there. But if push comes to shove, you could think about using egg boxes as well. We have quite a lot of these because we have 8 chickens at the moment, and each of those chickens is laying an egg a day. That's 8 eggs a day. You can do the maths of how many eggs that is in a week, and if you think about it, how many eggs can you eat per day? There's 2 of us. We certainly struggle to eat 8 eggs a day. So we end up giving friends and neighbours eggs, which means people give us a lot of egg boxes. And I was listening to a podcast the other day about someone who uses this as a system for transporting figures. So I've got some unpainted here. So, you know, in each of these, you can easily fit a 28mm figure. The base fits just nicely in the bottom there. You can put some bubble wrap or stuff like that on top. Of course, you can then close that up. And if you've got a few of these in a bag or something similar, then they're held pretty much firmly in place. So I like that. That's a very simple method, very cheap and effective. And so finally we come to my purchase, my unexpected purchase really. I always think it's nice, you know, if you've got a few bob spare to get yourself something that's tailor-made and is going to be a very useful bit of kit, because if you're gaming once or twice a week, this sort of thing is going to get a lot of use. And importantly, of course, you know, figures aren't that cheap. I think even more so the time taken to paint them, that's what really hurts. When one gets broken and can't be used anymore, it's that time you took to paint it that you really miss. So we've got a nice little gargoyle bat on the side there as the logo. I shall put the link up to the manufacturer in the notes below. The name escapes me for the moment, but they are on Amazon. And this was 28 quid. So we've got a nice outside case with a handle on top. We've got a nice sturdy zip. It sounds odd, doesn't it? But zips is something I look at quite a lot. Quite often when you buy cheap stuff, whether it's things like this or even clothing, you always know it's cheap when you look at the zips and you think, yeah, that zip's going to last about 10 minutes, then it's going to break. Now, let's just take this part out first of all. So we've got some nice foam in here. We've got the tray. We've got a silica gel put in there already. That's a nice touch. And one reason I got this, because my 28mm figures are covered. I've got those boxes already. But as you can see here, we've got much larger compartments. So these are good for my larger figures. I've got things with wings and, you know, giant snakes and spiders, all that sort of stuff. These will fit nicely in that tray, most of them. However, the ones that won't, you can tailor make your own sort of compartments here. I don't know, can you just see that there? See, you can tear out, these are in quite small squares, so you can tear out the exact shape you need for each figure. I'm not going to do that yet because obviously I want to know exactly what figures are going in here first of all, and then I'll start tearing all this out. And look how deep that is as well. So I can probably stand up some figures in this, or maybe terrain pieces, or if you're doing sort of modern stuff, AFVs, vehicles, that kind of thing. I've got a big statue somewhere that we used in the last We Want the Gold. That will fit in here nicely. So yeah, I'm very pleased with that. And I think for 28 quid, that's a good investment. Now, having said that, I'm not sure if this figure will go in there, my Star Spawner Cthulhu that I recently completed. Well, actually, I guess it will, because if we just look at the, yeah, maybe just about. That might just fit in there. I'm probably going to put this in its own separate box and then take that in the plastic tub. I think I'm going to do with that. Then I can put lots of packaging around it. And to be honest, if I use this for the Star Spawn, it's pretty much going to take that and not much else. So that's quite expensive just to carry one figure. So I'm going to stick with its own box for that one. Now, the other thing I heard, again, I think it was on one of the podcasts I was listening to recently, was you can go to foam manufacturers and have your own trays cut to your specific size, kind of made to measure. It's not something I've looked into yet, but that could be another possibility as well. So in effect, get your own foam trays, and then of course you can go with your laptop box or whatever else you're going to use. And if that is the case, if you'll excuse the pun, if you just want to take a few figures, then you can get your own foam made up, or perhaps you just want to use bubble wrap and foam pieces. Keep an eye out for these things as well. This is called, is it Polar Gear? Again, I think this was B&M, a few quid, and it's really to carry sandwiches, I think, maybe, pack lunches. What I tend to do with this is all my camera gear goes in this, so my tripods and batteries and cases and all that stuff. I've got a couple of these, they're very useful. But I could see very easily again how you could use that to transport some figures. Maybe you just got a dozen or so for an RPG session or something. And again, that's very easy to carry. Okay, there we go. I think that's a pretty good selection of methods there. Hopefully there's something to suit everyone and pretty much every situation or every item. And it does become a thing I think about when I'm looking at buying figures, because even with that foam, even with the foam trays, I've got two figures who are carrying staffs, both of which broke when they were put away last time. And this is the issue. You know, you can sometimes take your time setting a game up. Typically, particularly if you're in a premises somewhere, you're in a bit of a rush to put everything away, and that's when accidents can happen. So I do try and keep my purchases restricted to figures that are compact, if you like, that aren't carrying a big spear or sort of got something sticking out or bits and pieces sticking out, because I do find they can be quite fragile. That aside, everything else is working fine. I'd be very pleased, very interested to hear any suggestions that you have, for example, particularly in that idea of getting foam. What's a good source for buying that foam? Can you get it yourself? Can it be cut to size? And of course, is it cheaper than buying one of the big made up boxes? And I'm not knocking the manufacturers for charging what they do, because, you know, anyone who's running a business or is self-employed these days knows how tough it is to get decent materials and all the rest of it, all the other expenses. But, you know, I've always been a bit of a DIY person in terms of that. Certainly not when it comes to showers and putting shelves up, that kind of thing. I'm quite happy to pay someone else to do it. So yeah, please do let me know your thoughts, your comments and suggestions, and welcome as well to our new subscribers. We've had a recent influx of new subscribers. Thanks very much for signing up, much appreciated. And yeah, when you subscribe to any YouTube channel, it really does help that channel. It's one of the single biggest things you can do to help people with their YouTube channels, is just to click that subscribe button. All right, that's it for now. Safe travels with all your figures, and I'll see you next time.